This season, not your average bucket list. We're talking about local lore and legends. So, for anybody that's joining us for the first time, shame on you because we're halfway through the season. No, but for real. So, this season, we've talked a lot state by state about different creatures, animals. We've discussed Mothman in West Virginia. We've briefly mentioned skunk ape in Florida. So all of these creatures go by the name of cryptids.
Yes.
And so the word cryptid is referencing a creature that is believed to exist without significant proof.
Yeah. And cryptozoology and all of the associated, research around it is just that. It's not so much um there's a fine line I think between a cryptid and a mythical creature because you could reference things say from religious texts or just like local legends and say like a golem or a djinn, and that leans more towards I think away from cryptid and more
Yeah.
mythology.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's the skunk apes, yeti, um, mothman, chupacabra, stuff like that. That is considered a cryptid.
Yeah. So, first of all, researching this episode, I was really heartbroken to find out, I don't know this late in life, that Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, that photo was not real and admitted by the person that took it that it was a setup. And so I was looking I was looking
I'm
at it
so
again.
sorry that happened to you. That is
My
truly.
dreams are shattered.
There's
Um
always Champion, Chessie, and all the other ones, though. You never know.
right. Hoppy, wasn't Hoppy one? Um but so I was looking at this photo again, and I don't know what my like third, fourth grade mind believed, but
Yeah.
now just the scale is off. It looked super weird.
Mhm.
Like the waves were so much bigger than Nessie herself. And apparently the guy that took the photo like 40 years later admitted it was all a ruse. He taped a plastic dinosaur toy on top of a small submarine toy, and
Wow.
lo and behold, that's
Yeah, because
Nessie.
like you said, it was small scale. It wasn't a picture of
Yeah.
the middle of the lake. It was
Mhm.
I will say, I wanna give you hope, though, because in our
Okay.
world, we can't be arrogant enough to know that we are aware of all creatures. I know we mentioned last time that deep sea fish in the Mariana Trench are still being discovered, and the fact that, things like a megalodon or, prehistoric fish that we thought were extinct, like the oarfish, I think, and also, like the coelacanth. Like we thought they were extinct, but they are not. And
Hmm.
so I think there's opportunity there for sea serpents and monsters to exist and us not know. Maybe not that specific picture. I'm sorry, fourth grade Marissa. That is, that's fine. It's nostalgia now,
Right.
but
Yes.
there's still opportunity for things to be out there and existing.
I think to me that was what was so fascinating about researching for cryptids is that whether or not the Loch Ness monster, that photo was doctored, the idea of cryptozoology, it's a study and
Mhm.
it's an actual, some people say it's pseudoscience, some people say that it's just plain science. And it's just studying unknown, legendary, extinct animals that the existence or survival to present day might be disputed, might be there might not be any proof, but it's still a field of study that's been around um, since like I found as early as 15th century BC. I don't know if you found like origins or anything like that.
Well, I will say that for me, I always consider the origins of myths, legends, lore is from a misunderstanding of natural occurrences, legends, and culture, and just things that across the globe that people needed to explain, and that's how things have evolved. So, if you look at, say, dragons, obviously considered a fictional creature, but countless societies have a version of a dragon in their myths.
Hmm.
Why that is, I mean, could it be based on like large lizards, sea creatures, whatever it is? But it's just, I think, a very, at almost a sort of not unionized, but like it's a fact of nature that we were going to try and explain something, and we come up with similar ideas for why something might have happened or what creature existed, and the fact that it's just wild that everyone has a dragon and Yeti
Yeah.
and Bigfoot. Like that, it's something that has, crossed global borders without, modern communication. So
Yeah. That is
yeah, that's
fascinating.
hmm
And it's there's something about cryptids that literally mesmerize people and for like thousands of years. There's
right.
something about it. What if you had to just like for maybe your own personal experience, if you had to summarize like why people are so mesmerized by cryptids, why it's such a fascinating thing, what is it that it triggers within people, like what would you say?
And just speaking from personal experience, I think people are attracted to the unknown. I think that it is scary and interesting and fun to believe in something that is speculation or maybe a myth. I also think that it would be nice to suspend disbelief and buy into the fact that maybe there is a creature that, is running rampant across the United States sucking the blood of goats. I think that's just, it's just fun. And also I think a lot of people in like, and I know you said some people consider it pseudoscience, but whenever people research and look for actual evidence of, say, a bipedal Bigfoot like creature, like there's a lot of different, pieces of evidence that point to perhaps something that exists. Maybe it isn't, these creatures of legend, but could there be some sort of North American ape that has existed until recent times? Maybe,
Yeah, right. Especially if it's being documented, as early as, let's say, like origin story. Let's say this is the first documentation of cryptozoology. You're in 15th century BC, Egypt. There's a queen, Hatshepsut, and she's sending ships across the Red Sea. They've never explored the Red Sea before. They have no idea what's over there. They have no idea what's happening. She's sending ships and she's ordering people to bring back unknown animals. And so that's literally where this all started, was unknown animals. Now
Yeah.
we know these animals, but for example, they were looking at what they dubbed a long-necked dragon.
Okay.
Now today we know that as a giraffe.
Right.
But back then,
Fair enough. Look, that's
right. Yeah.
if you
So
presented me and I had no schema for what a giraffe was and you dropped it in front of me, I'm like, "Yes, long neck. Yep, that checks out."
right.
The
Yes.
tongue, the neck, the pattern, like, yeah, that absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's so wild to me, is that, like all of these unknown animals, because essentially all the species that we know today were at that time unknown
Mhm.
to many of these people, and they were actually species that that's how we identify them, but back then they were considered to be cryptids, which, you
Yeah.
know, that's just where things originated. Like they call in Egypt, an African unicorn was an okapi, and then they didn't know what a parrot was. So imagine like their Mothman was just like a really beautiful
Yep.
parrot. Like it's interesting.
So speaking of Egypt, one of my favorite legends, and I remember watching this, and I think it was a History Channel or something like that whenever I was little, is the Salawa, which is a scary, basically ghost dog that was spotted in Egypt, and they associated it with oh gosh, various gods. I would assume um any jackal god or like Seth or Anubis or something like that, like to where it would be, or I guess Seth, associated with like a jackal or a dog, but it's just like a ghost white dog that I think was a harbinger of death. And I mean, as you like you said, it's unknown animals, but I think a lot of people point to like it was probably some sort of fox or like desert fox that people saw, but they didn't know what it was. They didn't have the proper
Hmm.
ways to describe it or say what. So I just think that yeah, it is fascinating to see what the origins actually were whenever they spotted an African unicorn. And
Right.
I mean, some of these things, I'm not sure if you've seen, I don't know if it's a musk deer. It's not a dick, but it's that deer that has like the holes in its face that,
Yeah.
oh God, maybe in the show notes we can show a picture of it because if I saw that in nature, I would assume that like an many-eyed demon was staring at me and I would
Interesting.
take off. No, thank you. Get out of there.
Right. Yeah.
I
Wow,
do
the
think
things that scare you and the things that scare me are very, very different.
or not feel like, "Oh, a deer in the middle of a peaceful forest, how nice." Um,
And you're like, "Get out of here."
hell no. I do think that, it's interesting to see the division of cryptids, though, because you get some of these more natural ones that have natural explanations, right? So we have, yetis and, sea serpents, anything that has, a possible explanation in nature, and then the ones that kinda start leaning towards beasts of legend.
Hmm,
So whether that's like a thunderbird or, maybe something like the, Jersey Devil, Mothman, Flatwoods Monster, because I'm not gonna s I know that we said maybe they were sandhill cranes or an owl, and people just mistook them, but it's like it took on a different life aside from
yeah,
just a creature. It was a thing, that's
yeah.
abducting humans or attacking us and just, malevolent and nefarious in nature. So it's a weird way that they sort of dovetailed off of the original concept of what a maybe cryptid was.
Yeah, I do think that is interesting that what began as just discovery of new creatures and animals over time developed into this folklore, and it has become so widely popular that there is this element of mysticism that's been added to it, to especially within the United States. I feel like with all of our cryptids, it's way different from just like historical cryptids. And like you said, there
Yes.
is this line of what's been distinguished as having some like mystical element to it versus just like the discovery of species.
And I think it's part of human nature to just develop these things. And as I said before, like maybe it's because we're trying to look for an explanation that isn't there, or you want to believe, you want to suspend disbelief. There's has to be something out there that we don't know. And you'll see it happen over and over in society. So even as recent, if we start thinking about urban legends and myths, I know we mentioned the the urban legend of, oh, the killer was in the house, or like the dog was licking the hand. These are more modern urban legends that have popped up in recent years. Same with some of the even social media trends like the Momo challenge and Slender Man, Smiling Man. Just people gravitate towards creating these big bads that just,
Hmm.
maybe they don't have proof of, or it just sounds like a scary time, but it evolves as more people listen. And I
Yeah.
think the same thing has happened for these cryptids within the United States, because I feel like each state has its own monster,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
monsters, if we're talking about, I mean, most of them really. Um, so I think it's really fascinating to see how people just like take up the mantle as each generation goes on. And so
Mm.
it might have started as in the 50s, 60s, 70s, these UFO sightings and Mothman and these big things. And then nowadays, all of these scary, scary creatures that we just come up with.
Mm. Yeah. And also, at the same time, who's to say that if we're going back, we're talking thousands of years to where these cryptids were being discovered. And what if just over time, because, there are many animals and species that have been extinct in our lifetime. So
Hmm.
what if it just like these cryptids stopped existing because they
Right.
they couldn't evolve with the times? Because let's say, back in, even dating back to the very first Asian Bigfoot was back still BC Sanskrit literature. They're referencing this monkey-like humanoid that has human intelligence, and they were named the Vanaras. And there
Hmm.
are tons of references in Sanskrit literature and Sanskrit epics that equate to this Asian Bigfoot. And we're talking about like BC,
Hmm.
So the fact that
Yeah.
it has morphed into this, Bigfoot Yeti, who's to say that these creatures, maybe they existed way back when and maybe there's only a couple of them now. I mean, like,
Hmm.
who's really to say?
Yeah, and plus whenever you think about all of the various pieces of evolution in our, genetic cousins that no longer exist, and if you were to see one today, or the fossils of one today, you might misunderstand what it was, thinking that
Hmm.
it's not necessarily an ancestor, but maybe a monster. And,
Hmm.
look, we're using our best guesses with a lot of this stuff too. Like if you are familiar with the whole drama around the brontosaurus not being a dinosaur because it was actually an apatosaurus where the skulls were switched, but someone it was like a marketing ploy. Someone just came out and said like, "Oh, this is a brontosaurus," and then Jurassic Park misrepresenting what and what the fossils are actually indicating
Uh,
for a lot of these creatures. Like it's I think it's a mix of like historical pieces of information that have been like bastardized over time and
right.
just built upon, and eventually you end up with a yeti or
Yeah.
or
Yeah. If
something
we
a little
just
bit.
boil it down.
I will say that when we think about the different creatures, myths and legends in the United States, there are some. I feel like we have to tear them out because there are some big boys that we all know. So
Mm.
the New Jersey Devil, the Mothman, Thunderbird, um, yeah, Chupacabra, stuff like that. But then as you drill down, you start to get some really interesting, like hyper local creatures. I don't know if you came across this, but whenever I was just researching Ohio, I discovered the Loveland Frogman.
Oh
Never
no.
heard of it in my life, but apparently in Loveland, Ohio, there was a bipedal frog humanoid creature that it sounds like someone just uploaded a Wikipedia page and was like, "Yep, that's it." But it's really fascinating to me that people are just so enamored by the fact that there are these creatures that they were like, "Yeah, well, I saw that frogman." You know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I do think it is interesting because I wonder to what extent some of these places just like desperately want their own cryptid as like a town mascot, or
Mhm.
because there are a ton of festivals across the US that, like, we were talking about the Mothman festival, and I think the Flatwoods Monster had its own festival.
Yeah.
Like, all of these festivals that are dedicated to these cryptids that bring in a lot of tourism because people are fascinated. So who's to say that some of these places are just making up their own cryptids just to kind of draw attention? I don't know.
Yes. So I'm gonna ask a question I don't know the answer to, and it's just like a fuzzy memory in my head. But weren't we discussing, or I was discussing with someone, the there's like a mythical creature that's a mascot for a town in Ohio? Weren't we,
Yeah,
or a town somewhere?
in Wisconsin, the
Wisconsin.
hodag.
Yes, the host. Exactly
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I think that was in season one. We were talking about it.
Yep.
Yeah, the hodag. Yes, and then you Googled it, and you were like, "What the heck is this thing?" And it just makes no sense.
It doesn't, and you know what? I'm just gonna repeat history for a second because I need to just be reintroduced to the hodag.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, and that is a hyper local creature, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yep.
And I know they claimed that there was a hoax, but it took on its own life form as this cryptid that's in the middle of Wisconsin. And
Right.
this is the stuff I just A plus.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know
It's so interesting to me. Like, also it's funny because I do just have a fascination with towns and cities and their random mascots, because like Santa Cruz and the banana slug just like
what?
is forever my favorite. Yeah, Santa Cruz, California, their mascot is a banana slug.
Hey, okay. Well, we need to put a
Yeah.
pin in that and discuss at some
Yeah.
point because that is
Yeah.
okay. All
Right.
right, that's fair enough.
Season 3, town mascots.
Actually, you okay? Hold on there. So, like, okay, state season 3 state pride, but it's not normal state pride. It's
Oh,
all of the
interesting.
weird stuff, like taking
Love it.
shots of vodka and eating cheese after. Guess the state, you know?
Wait, is that a thing?
Okay, unless someone lied to me, I feel like I know a couple people who live in Madison, Wisconsin, who
Okay.
claim that, like, chasing shots with cheese was a thing. Maybe they were
Interesting.
just lying to me, or that's they just look, if
It's
you're gonna have to sell me
believable.
on a chaser, cheese is great. I mean, I'm
Right.
not gonna
It's
say
so
no.
funny. A shot of vodka and a cheese curd. Boop, boop. How interesting. Yeah, I can see that for Wisconsin, because don't they also have the most bars per capita in the across the United States?
Really?
That's what,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Look, I'm telling you, this off the wall state pride is next season. Not to get off the rails here, but
No. I would be
mascots,
down.
common. Oh, okay.
Weird rituals, weird meals. There's
Yes.
some meals too. Like, I've just read through some things on Only in Your State on like the weird food combinations that some states have that it just blows my mind.
Hit me with one. What was the weird one you found?
I mean, one of them, which you're not gonna find it this weird, I'm sure, but in Georgia, they're huge on tomato sandwiches, and it's just tomatoes and mayo,
That's not a sandwich.
and that's it, right? Like, what else is happening there? And they also are very particular about their mayo too in Georgia, but
So what okay.
just yeah,
I'm a Mayo fan. I need to know, is it Dukes,
it's
Hellman's,
Duke's,
UP ugh,
it's Duke's. Yep,
okay.
yep,
I don't know how to feel about that. That's
yeah.
a wet sandwich. That's what it is, and no
Right.
not to disparage. I'm sorry, Georgians.
It's a wet
No,
sandwich.
thank you.
That would not travel well, that sandwich. Let's just say that, but
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm also not using the right tomatoes. You know, I know that
mm-mm.
people get those, like, big
Interesting.
beefsteak heirloom, like, real thick ones, and then okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think what we need to do is refocus a little bit and think about we talked about cryptids and the fact that there are people who research it, who make a living or it is their hobby to just like dive into what these things are, what are the
Mm,
sightings, what are the evidence, how is it like a cultural revolution and phenomenon, like, and to me that is amazing. I love it so much, and we're actually going to this season have guests on the show that will help us understand more fully this entire world, because I think it's easy to just chat about it and say, yeah, isn't that crazy? But I'd love to get more in depth knowledge on some of these things, because we're casuals,
absolutely.
right? Like, we're not the
Yeah.
pros.
No, I think that's gonna be great. I'm so excited to talk to people that are considered experts in this field because to
Hmm.
me there's only so much research you and I can do to for a particular area or a cryptid versus these people that we're going to have on and interview them and talk to them about their years of experience and expertise. And probably I'm just excited to learn a lot more, I think, especially about individual cryptids.
Hmm.
Like we're going to be talking about Bigfoot
Yes.
more and skunk ape hopefully,
Hmm.
and anything else off the top of your head that we're definitely going to cover.
So there's going to be we're hopefully going to be touching upon something from Texas called the Texas Dog Man, which I've never heard of myself.
Cool.
Definitely Bigfoot, some UFO sightings, some of the creepiest things happening in Alaska as well. Um, and even if we can't get all of those on live segments, I think it'll be important for us to kind of circle back and discuss them, as well as how cryptids and this entire culture has an impact on society and how it's evolving. So I know we talked about in our Flatwoods episode, or actually the West Virginia episode, how the Flatwoods monster and Mothman have become a society staple, and there
Mm,
are 5K races and festivals and events all about these things that maybe probably don't exist. I
hmm.
don't know. I can't say. So it's gonna be a fun time, and I'm really excited to kind of get these people on the show and pick their brains about, yeah, just about what the passion research they do. And our first guest is going to be Heather from a group called Small Town Monsters, who is hyper local to my area, and that's how I stumbled upon them. But they produce, films, books, events, and all about cryptids and the paranormal and just like these off the wall things. And it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I took a deep dive on their YouTube channel,
Hmm.
and it's just so much fun. You can literally just spend hours browsing this small town monster content because it's just really well put together and well
Yeah.
researched, and it really is just enjoyable to watch.
So, yeah, that's going to be coming up in these special episodes. I think we're also going to get back to our state episodes as well and maybe mix in some of the cryptozoology and things that we learn as we go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to dive into cryptids with Heather. That's going to be
Hmm.
a lot of fun, that conversation. And then we're going to focus a lot on Ohio for a little bit because there's a lot going on just in that area in particular, and a
Hmm.
festival that you're going to be attending, which is very cool.
Yes, it's gonna be Monster Fest on June 3rd in Canton, Ohio, and I'm gonna attend, hopefully get some footage and interviews, and just, like, there's some big names, like, in the space, there's some big names attending, so I'm very excited, and we're gonna get some, exclusive content for our listeners and readers, so that'll be a lot of fun, and then also for the Ohio episodes, I've done a lot of I'll just say I've done a lot of urban exploration for the some of the places that we're gonna be talking about, so I would love to share some of the media that I've taken over the years, so
Definitely. Cool. Can't
yeah,
wait. Everybody stay tuned. More cryptids coming at you this
coming
season.
up. For season 2, Not Your Average Bucket List will be exploring local lores and legends throughout the country. So, if you're up for the audio adventure, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.